Hello, everyone. This is Sean Martin, Editor-in-Chief for ICSP Magazine. I would like to first welcome you to our ITSP TV channel here on Bright Talk. And then second, thank you for joining us today for our webcast, Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning in Cybersecurity. What's the difference? Just a few business items here. You can actually rewatch a replay of this video at any time from our ITSP TV channel on Bright Talk or via the same link you use to access this live broadcast. We have roughly 60 minutes allocated for this webinar, which includes some time for us to take questions at the end. This is a fairly deep topic, as you can imagine, so hopefully we'll keep things on track and move things along. And with that, we'll actually hold most, if not all, of the questions for the end of our discussion. But still, feel free to submit your questions at any time using the Q&A widget there in the panel. So just a quick introduction to ITSP Magazine. Some of you may not be familiar with it. We're actually looking at the human element of cybersecurity, providing a view into what we do as cybersecurity as a profession, and more importantly, why it matters to society. So we encourage you to stay tuned to what our team is doing as we bring together, hopefully, what's seen as a unique collection of experts to discuss and explore some of the fascinating, yet sometimes perhaps unsettling topics of intersection of IT security and society. And today, as your moderator, I'll lead us through the discussion to explore a few items. First, as the topic describes, what the difference is between artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning, ML, what the difference is there. And then also how AI and ML could be used for good and evil, perhaps. And then we'll take a look at what the future holds for these technologies and models. And with that, I'd like to give a very warm ITSP TV welcome to this amazing panel. We're actually short one this morning. Unfortunately, Engin from Distill was not able to join us, but we still do have Igor Bakalov, Chief Scientist at Securonics, Stefan Zhu, CTO at Intercept, and Sven Krasser, Chief Scientist at CrowdStrike. And gentlemen, I again thank you very much for joining us. And I'll start off with Igor, if you could, and then ask the other two folks to jump in as well. Basically, a quick sense about yourself, your company, and why AI and machine learning are important to you. And again, Igor, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Sean. I'm Igor Bakalov, Chief Scientist for Securonics, a security analytics company. We created the field of user behavior analytics back in 2010, and been using machine learning to augment analyst abilities to detect complex threats. Anything from insider threat to fraud detection. That's where we see more and more applications of machine learning and cybersecurity.
Fantastic. And Stefan?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Basically, I'm here because I'm a big fan of artificial intelligence and machine learning and related analytical methods. I started out doing neuroscience and research on memory formation at the University of Toronto, Canada, and I'll name drop a little bit. This is where Geoffrey Hinton started out doing his neural network research, and of course he's now one of the fathers of deep learning. So during that time, I basically learned a lot about the way the brain works and the way some of the math behind the brain works. And as a result, spent over a decade at IBM and Cognos implementing artificial and machine learning to solve some really amazing problems. And so I'm now proudly at Intercept, where we tell people that we catch bad guys with math, where we're applying many of these methods in order to solve what I believe are really important problems in cybersecurity. So I'm thrilled to be here to speak a little bit about my passion.
Fantastic. Stefan and Sven, please.
Hey everybody, I'm Sven Krasser. I'm Chief Scientist at CrowdStrike. I've been doing machine learning for about a decade now in the cybersecurity space. At CrowdStrike, like our main goal is we say we stop breaches. That's basically what we do, and we do this as both next generation antivirus, but also as an EDR solution. The main idea is to use data to understand objectives and intents. We call it indicators of attacks, as opposed to legacy signatures and artifacts, which we call indicators of compromise. So machine learning is a very important tool in that tool chest to accomplish that goal, and we use it both on the endpoint and in the cloud at CrowdStrike.
Perfect. And I don't know if Engin joined us, actually. Engin, are you on?
I did.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. So, Engin Akil, Distill Networks. At Distill Networks, the primary thing that we do is basically try and differentiate automated traffic from normal user traffic. And well, where machine learning comes into play here is that the amount of things we can do in real time with basic tool sets using like JavaScript is very, very limited. So a lot of our deep analysis falls back to looking at how human beings are actually browsing and interacting on the websites, and then trying to separate automated traffic because they do start to really differentiate themselves in terms of what they're accessing and how they're accessing. So we utilize a lot of ML on our backend to really, over a longer period of time, to look at all the traffic of our customers and try to really identify which ones are sourced by automated threats and try to inform our customers of those automated threats.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, gentlemen. And this first, I'm going to do a couple polls throughout this panel. This first one might seem a bit funny. Is artificial intelligence real? And I bring this up, no offense to the folks representing vendors here, but perhaps some of the marketing language that's spun around the web and at conferences could be perceived as a bit of snake oil. So just a quick view from the audience. How many believe that this stuff is actually real, that we can actually see some value of it from these technologies? I'll give it a few minutes. Not a few minutes, a few clicks here for everybody to get their votes in. The votes still coming in. Folks believe that there's value here and that it's real. This is a good sign. I'll give it another couple seconds. Get your votes in. Few more countdown. We're running about 88%, 90% believe it's real. So thankfully we're talking about a topic that people believe in, which is good.
But we have a healthy amount of skepticism there too, which is good.
Perfect. So let's get into it now. And before we get too far down the road, what I really want to explore is what the difference is. It's a pretty complex topic, and so I'd like to get from each of the panelists just their take on what the difference is. Artificial intelligence versus machine learning, is one inclusive of the other? Obviously, we have a lot to discuss here, so don't share everything all in one shot, but just your first thoughts on the main differences. And Igor, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Well, machine learning is part of artificial intelligence. It's a core driver behind actually many of the rest of disciplines and technologies within AI stable. Sean and I have been talking about these differences, I believe, for at least a year since last Thursday, where we both were kind of shocked by the amount of marketing buzz around both definition and lack of clarity as far as what does what. I think, considering most of the practical applications in cybersecurity don't really go much beyond machine learning, calling it AI is kind of doing disservice to AI. As a lot more, at least to me, AI does have to include ability to reason, ability to organize and structure knowledge. And some might disagree, but I believe that artificial intuition is a big part of AI in the sense that artificial intelligence has to be able to deal with a lack of data. It's like being able to guess the rest of the picture seen by the fragment or understand the meaning of the sentence even if some of the words are missing. So that's it's especially critical for cybersecurity, where we do deal with sparse data, incomplete data, and trying to reconstruct the whole picture based on the limited knowledge of the situation. That's all.
Very good. AI is part of ML. Sven, your thoughts on the difference?
So it's hard to define, right? Everybody has their own definition. In my mind, I see artificial intelligence as a superset of machine learning. So machine learning is part of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence has more topics, like as a superset, right? So you have like things that are not necessarily pure machine learning tasks that are in there. Like think about, for example, self-driving cars right now, right? That would be like a good example for something that I would consider more artificial intelligence than machine learning, or like similar computer vision tasks, like things that require perception of an environment, so not just like classification or sorting data. In the same way, natural language processing, lots of progress in that area, right? There's a little bit of overlap, but that's basically where I see the additions of AI over machine learning. As far as the 8% of the audience go that voted that artificial intelligence is not real, so it really depends on the definition, right? And one of the things that causes constant confusion is this kind of quote unquote Skynet idea, right? That's not necessarily what we in the industry would consider right now the kind of artificial intelligence that we're involved in. That's what is called strong AI or artificial general intelligence. That's basically where you have, like the robots that you can talk to and all these kinds of things. That's more science fiction right now. We will get there, but this will take us a little bit longer. That's a little bit different from the applied AI that we're looking at right now.
Nice one. So at the beginning, I caught the reverse, that ML is part of AI, so in a slightly different perspective there. Good stuff, Sven. Engin, your view, please.
Yeah, so I think I kind of fall into the 8%, where I'm a skeptic in terms of, is AI real or not? And the reason I'm a skeptic is because once you start talking about and defining AI, you really have to caveat it with different levels, and right now we have this amount of AI and we want to get to that amount of AI, and then eventually I guess Skynet is kind of the goal, right? For me, the key difference between AI and ML is the aspirational versus what is actually real and in existence. ML is used. There's a lot of algorithms that are machine learning algorithms. They're employed in a lot of systems in different industries across the world, and it's something that's both quantifiable and also something that we can point to and be like, this is the current methodology we use in terms of machine learning, and here's the methodology we want to go to. With AI, it's much more almost philosophical in terms of caveating what you mean by artificial intelligence, because we don't have true artificial intelligence. There is no machine in existence that can operate and learn on its own outside of the confines of like a sandbox or something, right? And so for me, like when I think of the difference between AI and ML, I think of ML as like the practical in production, in deployment right now, and AI is more the aspiration of like where we really want to get to in the future.
Skeptic on the call. Look at that. Thanks, Engin. And Stefan, can you round it out for us?
Sure. I think I agree with the majority of the panel that machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. And the simplest, quickest way I can think of explaining that perspective is to compare artificial intelligence and machine learning to natural intelligence and human learning in us as humans that think and interact with the environment around us. So obviously, we do more than just learning. Learning is obviously an important part of what makes us intelligent, but we do also interact with the world around us. There's perception, there's our ability to understand the three-dimensional geometric representations, what our eyes see, there's understanding of speech. So that is a big part of it on the input side. On the output side, we interact with the environment around us. Stan brought up the example of self-driving cars. We navigate, we pick up objects, we speak sentences, maintaining context inside a conversation. We plan actions and we manipulate objects with an end goal and desired outcome in mind. And then, going from the output back to what's in our head, we certainly learn, but we also represent knowledge in a certain way. So there's a codification that happens. There's emergent phenomena that is associated with intelligence, like creativity, intuition, moral reasoning. Those are all things that are, to me, above and beyond just the learning aspect. So I do see machine learning as an important, but a subset of all the things that AI implies to me.
Perfect. Thanks. Thanks, gentlemen. So as most things powerful, and certainly we can, I believe we can all agree that if they're real, these technologies and models can be extremely powerful. Things like this could be used for both good and or evil. So I'll ask a couple of you. We'll start with Sven. Can you give us an example of where AI or ML has been used for evil, and specifically from a cybersecurity perspective? Have we seen bad actors taking advantage of or leveraging these technologies?
Yeah, I think the good news is I think we have a head start here as the defenders. There's a couple of things that come to mind. Take a look, for example, at captchas, right? Like these little text challenges on websites that you need to fill out, or where you need to click on certain things that are described to prove that you're a human, right? So those are things that make great targets for machine learning, for an adversary trying to get in there that is actually like a bot to beat these captchas. So it's basically kind of like a little bit of an arms race to make these things good enough that AI approaches can beat them. Like one way you can make that, you can create something that can beat it, is using techniques called adversarial learning, where you basically pit two AIs against each other, or two machine learning classifiers against each other, and they learn from each other as they go along. So that could apply in more areas, right? I mean, it's conceivable that the bad guys will try to craft malware files in this fashion. But right now, there's just so many low-hanging fruit that that's not necessarily necessary. Like in the same vein, there's some other areas, right, that might be more nuisances at this point. So for some reason, the last 2 weeks, I got a lot of telemarketing calls, like robocalls, and that's fairly sophisticated now, where you have like more interactive speakers that react to what you say. So that's kind of a more of a nuisance, but that's a way how the bad guys behind these kinds of things, these kinds of initiatives, how they can scale it, right? Because it's a lot cheaper to have an artificial bot that way, as opposed to a call center with humans that need a lot of space, right? You can put this on a server, or you can have a warehouse full of call center employees. So those are a few things that come to mind in that context.
Interesting stuff. And Stefan, any additional ones you want to add here? Example of evil. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, AI is just a tool, like any other tool. It's not inherently good or evil. So as Sven said, nothing prevented deep learning algorithms to be applied to captchas to break them. One good example that I think hasn't been mentioned before is using machine learning to generate phishing emails. So, for example, we already use machine learning to detect emails that are spam or not spam, phishing or not phishing, and we do that by feeding those models with examples of here's a phishing email, here's a non-phishing email, for example. And so that's good, and that's a score for us on the defense side. But there's no reason why hackers can't use the exact same technique to learn which one of their many phishing emails have actually resulted in a click, and therefore learn over time with enough of data which techniques in the actual phishing email are actually more sophisticated and more likely to succeed versus those which are not. So we're almost at the point where phishing emails can be generated to the point where they can be very customized and start to approach spear phishing levels of accuracy. So that's I think a nice example of the same technique applied in the same problem space, but being used on the side of evil as opposed to the side of good.
Very good. We have a lot of content to get through, so unless Engin or Igor has another burning example, we'll move on. Engin or Igor, do you have anything to add?
I'd just like to mention that, we don't hear that much about the high successes on the bad sides because one of the reasons is their marketing departments are not as well funded as on the good side. I mean, even with exploding dark web marketplaces, most of the stuff is done very practical, and we see it in some botnet management. We see it in some rudimentary machine learning applications in identifying the best targets for DDoS attacks and so forth. It's definitely used. It's just not bragged about it as much.
Interesting. You mentioned marketing on a slightly different topic, but certainly bad actor topic. I heard last week that the bad actors are doing a far better job marketing. Just look at the number of phishing clicks that take place. But good stuff. So what I'd like to do now is maybe switch it up a little bit. There may be a few on the line that actually get a kick out of the evil possibilities. But I'll go out on a limb and maybe we'll say it's the same 90% that agree that AI and machine learning are actually real, that we're actually able to do some good with this as well. So, Engin, I'd like to start with you. Maybe an example of where we're seeing some success already. And remember, we'll talk about the future a bit later, so on what's available now.
Yeah, so, it's very interesting. So the other panelists actually touch upon some very, very real-world uses of ML being used for good in terms of both really helping defenders kind of analyze and identify anomalies quicker. From a security engineering perspective, there's so many data inputs that are now available for the ops team, the security team, fraud team, et cetera. And being able to sort out the noise is getting to be kind of like a critical aspect of the job. And I think, at least from our perspective, where ML really excels is being able to bubble up anomalies that are actual threats that might otherwise get lost in a sea of noise. And so, one example is on one of our own customers a while back, we were able to kind of detect a campaign of unusual requests that was hidden specifically because we have correlated access from across the globe to a specific URL that there wouldn't normally be correlated access for. That any security researcher looking at it would be like, hey, this is kind of weird, right? And that was actually bubbled up by our own machine learning algorithms, not by somebody actually looking at data. And I think, in the initial forays of ML assisting engineers and security operatives kind of to really filter out unessential noise of just like the usual chattiness of network devices and chattiness of security devices in general, and really be able to hone in on anomalies is a huge boon to really reducing the time to be able to mitigate breaches or penetrations that are occurring.
Very good, very good. Igor, an example from you where we're seeing some good taking place.
Well, first, all of us haven't job on the good side, right? And all of us using AI and mail, so that's a good thing to start with. I want to, besides technical applications of machine learning and AI in detecting threats and kind of processing this massive amounts of data that are just not possible for a single human to comprehend, I want to stress the role of machine learning in sharing knowledge. A lot of the stuff we do is really helping humans to, analysts and researchers and to do their job more efficiently. So it's the ability to capture what more experienced peers have done regarding to this. So that scenario, in responding to this or that threat, it helps, to provide this as a guidance to less experienced to maybe, younger analysts starting in the role.
Perfect. So to help folks out. And Sven or Stefan, either of you have an example you'd like to share? Sven, you want to go first?
Sure thing. I think, if it's about using it for good, like everybody here on the panel, right, that we're all using machine learning, and we all believe that we're doing something good for our customers in the industry. So I think those are the prime examples. Like speaking for CrowdStrike and like kind of echoing what my fellow panelists already said, right? What you can do with machine learning is you can detect things at a higher complexity. You can detect them more accurately, and you can do this a lot faster for data that goes beyond human cognition. And I think that's one of the great advantages, like one of the ways we can use it to do good in the security space and how it's being used right now.
Perfect. And Stefan, we'll hold your example for a bit later. I'd like to do another quick poll. And I'll go ahead and start the poll as I describe what I'm looking for here. So now that we have a bit of knowledge about what these things are and how they could be used for both good and evil, I'd like your thoughts on what's the more serious threat. Is it a human threat? Are we still the weakest link, or with the introduction of artificial intelligence, does that become a bigger threat for us? So start tapping away and let us know what you think. Are we, the humans, more dangerous than machines, or the other way around? So far, the majority thinks us humans are still the greatest threat. I'll give it a couple more seconds here. Tap away if you like. And we're right around the 80-20 rule. So perhaps that means that that 20% AI threat is equal to 80% of the risk, right? Who knows? Anyway, 85-15 roughly. Thanks everybody for voting. Clearly, we still have some work to do to continue to protect the human element of things. So that's a topic for another discussion, clearly. So let's take it a bit more operationally now, and let's take a look at where AI and machine learning can actually help the business. What areas of the business can this apply to? And for benefit of time, I'm gonna go ahead and take the next question as well. So anything related to the business, but specifically, if you have examples in InfoSec. Let's take a look at both of those areas. And Sven, we'll start with you. Maybe a use case for how AI and ML can help the business and help security teams.
Yeah, so I think generally it's most interesting to use AI and ML where you have lots of data, lots of complex data. I think that's where a lot of the meat is. That's why at CrowdStrike we like to use it a lot in the cloud, but we also have it on the endpoints, just to have a quicker reaction cycle. Data is very important for that, and the way I like to describe that is if you take a look at movie recommendations, right? Like if you get your recommendations from Netflix, they seem to be very spot on. At least that's the case for me. That's because Netflix has all the data in the cloud, right? If you go to your local Blockbuster, your clerk only knows what's going on locally in that store, and therefore the recommendations may not be as spot on as you have them with Netflix. So data is a huge driver. Like having quality data, having lots of it, that's where it makes sense to use machine learning. There's a couple of places where they can be applied in InfoSec programs. Understanding behavior. I think that's something here that many panelists are involved in modeling user behavior, modeling behavior of programs on machines. Those tend to be very complex, abstract, high-dimensional data sets. Machine learning works very well for that. Other examples, for example, if you go to VirusTotal, the CrowdStrike has an AV engine that is purely machine learning based. It's very compact. It's just like a 15 megabyte data file that allows it to detect malware proactively without daily updates. So that's another great example because it generalizes. You don't need signatures, right? But you can generally describe what makes maliciousness. There's many areas in InfoSec where it applies, where you need this kind of property, where you want to understand what makes it malicious, and not just looking at specific chunks and pieces. So you want to learn the questions and understand the matter of a multiple choice test, right? You don't want to understand just which check marks you need to make, which would be the difference between understanding maliciousness and signatures.
Perfect example, Sven. Thank you. And Igor, I know you're doing quite a bit in this space as well.
As Sven mentioned, behavioral analytics, is one of the largest beneficiaries of machine learning. For exactly the reason, the volume of data, the speed of data, and the speed is something I also want to mention. The attacks are getting faster, and scenarios are getting more and more diverse to being able to respond. We need to be able to respond in computer time, not human time. So that's the real pressure behind applying ML and AI to information security defenses. We need to get from human response time to computer response time to stop some of the attacks.
Nice one. Speed is critical for sure. And earlier, Sven mentioned pitting two AI machines against each other, and that, and as I think of Engin and Distill, certainly perhaps bots could be using some of this technology, and Distill technology can be combating that. So, Engin, maybe an example from you of use cases where this is actually succeeding.
Yeah, I mean, so it's very hard for us to determine what somebody else is doing, right? We do utilize ML, especially for in two kind of cases. One, on the automated side, so the system itself can respond, as Igor said, in machine time. For our customers, a delayed response, i.e. an analyst actually looking at the data and coming to a conclusion, usually means the attack has already happened, and also the evidence starts to get stale in terms of who perpetrated the attack and what they were going for and all this other stuff. And so the automated response from the ML side is kind of like critical for the speed. The other aspect that we kind of touched upon earlier is, again, like really being able to hone in when an analyst is involved in terms of what they're going to be investigating and what they're going to be spending most of the critical hours after an attack occurs, kind of like looking at to piece together what was happening and what the target was. On the offensive capabilities, one thing that I've heard of other companies doing that we don't actually do, but I've heard of other companies doing that they've tried to they have utilized other ML to train their own ML in terms of making it better at being able to respond to attacks. But in those cases, it has been within very strict confines where the dueling AIs, I guess you could call them, had a very strict inputs and very strict expected outputs. So they weren't really kind of evolving kind of on their own. That I think is a more interesting topic for a lot of people, right? They were more like, here are the parameters that we're going to input, and then we're going to have this automated system attack this other system, and we're really going to measure kind of like the results so we can kind of address what the bounds of our responses are going to be, right? And kind of like in that testing context. It is kind of hard for us to really, because we fight against automated bots, but those bots are always have a human driver behind them. A big part of that is because with the web being the way it is, it's very much a lower hanging fruit to tweak some things and change your identity than it is to actually build a massive infrastructure to have a machine actually kind of do that. So for us, we see a lot more human-driven bots, which I don't think are as sophisticated or as interesting necessarily to this panel. That will certainly change as defensive systems get better and force the attackers to really kind of up their game and develop countermeasures to get around the defenses. But right now, like a lot of the automation that we see is, usually a designer has built a bot to do one specific thing, and then when the bot gets stopped, then they go and manually change it. There's no real adaptation on the offensive side, for us at least.
Thank goodness, in one sense. Stefan, can you round it out with another use case for us, please?
Sure. I'm actually going to bring it up a level and try and sort of characterize the types of use cases that AI and ML are really good at. And I'm thinking particularly of the really hard, sort of subtle attacks, the really complex attacks that cover multiple feeds of data. And if you think about the types of things that a really smart human would be able to detect, so we all have these cyber hunters that are rock stars on our teams, and you talk to them and you say, well, how did you find this attack? Or how did you know something bad was going on? And they'll say things like, well, this sequence of events seemed really odd, and this VPN connection, that looks suspicious to me, and this set of ports, I don't usually associate that with this type of activity. So when a human uses words like suspicious or unusual or anomalous or this seems out of whack or this smells funny, we can turn words like that into math. We can turn that into statistics. So the benefit of applying sort of AI methods to turn human intuition into math is that math never gets tired. It never sleeps, right? So while we could do this important work with enough humans, we'll never have enough of these smart humans. So the benefit of turning that human intuition, that human intelligence into AI, that covers a large set of really useful use cases for us, and we can just basically apply that knowledge and scale the human team that we already have.
Great examples. Thanks, guys. And certainly, well, hopefully from a vendor perspective, everybody's doing a good job to make this stuff consumable. But let's just say that an organization wants to look at AI and machine learning for themselves to apply it to their business. What are some of the challenges they could find? And Igor, we'll start with you. What could make adopting this stuff difficult?
Technically, for us, the biggest difficulty is the data. Many organizations even then do all the monitoring and logging, but either don't have a complete coverage or logging levels insufficient for machine learning algorithms to make a determination, like Stefan mentioned, to be able to make the same conclusions as human does, because human has an experience, and if that experience is not captured in the data that machine learning receives, then it cannot make the same type of determination. So data, that's the challenge for us.
Great. And Stefan?
Yeah, data is absolutely very important. So is context as well. So, being able to sort of capture all the context that actually would have led a human to form the correct conclusion and decide that that is a valid case to investigate. I think that's a challenge. It's hard to get that information into the system, and sometimes the information that we need is not actually available in some sort of electronic form that we currently are required to be able to feed the algorithms. I would say that there's kind of a higher level challenge in around AI and ML in general, and we kind of alluded to that at the very first poll. There's a lot of confusion and noise, unfortunately, in this space. So I think one challenge just in general is separating the good stuff from the bad stuff. And so I worry about that a little bit, and that's why panels like this and educational material like this is, I think, fantastic. And I worry a little bit about sort of overselling the capabilities of AI. Those of us on the panel, I'm sure, are familiar with the concept of AI winters, where in the past, the capabilities have been sort of oversold and people got really excited, but then they were disappointed. We really couldn't effectively translate, Russian into English at the time of the Cold War. And so that led to a little bit of disappointment, disillusionment. That said, I'm very fond of saying math is magical, but not magic. So don't get me wrong. I built an entire career on top of analytics, and I've seen some amazing problems being solved in other industries using the same analytical methods that we are now applying to cybersecurity. I just want to make sure that people don't think that we need to take this technology with a lot of skepticism and education, so we can truly understand and be realistic about the capabilities of the current technologies that we have.
Perfect. And I'm gonna switch it to a slightly different perspective. We covered an inaction piece already, so I skipped that slide. But similar to challenges, I'm gonna look to Sven now, and perhaps a view into where these technologies fall short.
Yeah. So one challenge is if you integrate machine learning, it's on the engineering side, testing, for example, because these approaches are inherently probabilistic. So if you want to put a nice test together for your product, right, you need to deal with these uncertainties now, and that makes it actually quite a bit harder than if you compare that to legacy signature-based approaches, where you know that specific things always get detected. So that's a new problem that you have with these machine learning-based probabilistic approaches. Similarly, you need to make sure that you're detecting the right thing. And I want to echo and underscore what the panel already said. Data is very, very important. There's an anecdote in machine learning where the US Army tried to get a classifier together that detects tanks, and it worked actually very, very well on images with tanks and without tanks. But what it turned out to be is that actually it picked up on the gray sky in all the pictures that had tanks and the blue sky in all the other pictures. So it didn't really learn what you wanted it to learn, but it learned something else. And that's also something we see in the InfoSec space, right? Like, consider a classifier on your security log data. It has no value if that classifier learned from your log data that it should raise an alert every time your IPS issues an alert message to the logs, right? You want something that is deeper than that. So curating the data and looking at the right data is very, very important, and it's hard, and that's sometimes very challenging to express the data that you have in some form that actually works well with AI or ML approaches.
Nice one. Context there again. And again, anything else to add to this? Another example. False positives. Something that you learn. Yep.
I think that was a very, very, very good example that the panelists just made. From our perspective, the biggest thing we're always concerned with is false positives, because we really look at web access and we try to really focus on web application protection, the noises that we have in our data sets are immense, right? And so it is very easy to kind of follow a thread and think like, hey, we've got a really good classifier here, and this is fantastic, right? And then, we roll it out, we test it, and then we find out that no, actually this was basically a rabbit hole that we went down. One thing very early on that we really were absolutely convinced when we were trying to detect automated threats was that, the way machines would access data would be fundamentally different if we were looking at access or inter-arrival times, basically when the requests are being sent, because our hypothesis was that machines would be able to send requests much faster than users clicking around on a website. And we did a little bit, we had a limited data set, we took a look at that, and we're like, oh yeah, this is very, very promising. But when we tried to apply that across all of our customers, we quickly found out that there's such a disparity in the types of websites and how websites are designed that encourage different types of behaviors from the human users that our effectiveness in identifying automated threats based on just that method alone was greatly reduced than in the laboratory setting where it seemed like it would be promising when we were just running tests on our own. And so I think for us specifically, false positives is something that we're very, very cognizant about, because from our customers' perspective, if it ever comes to them thinking that ML is generating a false positive and they're losing revenue based on that, then they're just going to turn the system off. They'd rather risk the security hit than take a immediate loss in revenue, which they'd have to then defend to their own organizations. So we're very, very susceptible to false positives, and I think that really slows our progress down in the types of methodologies that we investigate.
And I think that, generally speaking, is probably one of the largest concerns folks have for this stuff. That's why I started off with the dig at the marketing claims. Actually put a piece together on that specific topic. What is this stuff and how does it apply? So very interesting. As with any new technologies, right? The accuracy of how it works is always in question. But hopefully this panel and their teams are doing good things to help continue to improve there. So I'm going to switch it up a little bit. I've actually been having a conversation. I'm working on an article with a gentleman from a hospital. He runs the InfoSec program there. And since the magazine focuses on the intersection of security and society, we've been looking at the ethical use of data and technologies and models like artificial intelligence and machine learning to do some important things, such as finding cures to hard to cure diseases, or seeing a trend in a particular disease or outbreak and giving warning to folks. So it's a balance of collecting enough information to make good decisions and ethically using that information to drive some action. Perhaps a little less dramatic just from a pure cyber threat perspective, unless it does cross back into the hospital realm. But when is it okay to collect, use, and then even expose private information, and then when is it good to do so? And Stefan, I'll start with you. Your initial thoughts on this, please.
Sure. I mean, it's certainly a really important area to consider. I'm sure some of us may be familiar with some of the shadow profile research done by, say, Facebook. So, it's amazing how much information can be derived from what seems like a very low level or information that's not even related to the person that's being profiled. And of course, with customers all across the world, including the EU, it's important to sort of respect privacy issues. That said, the good news is there are analytical methods that help de-identification and tokenization methods, some of the differential privacy methods that's been popularized by Apple. Those are all ways essentially where the math can still work perfectly fine without actually having an understanding of the identity that is being profiled or investigated. So, for example, at Interset, we've had a lot of success with basically running our mathematical models on users that whose identity are completely masked and tokenized. That doesn't care whether you are looking at John Smith or user 123. The math works perfectly fine. So what I've seen implemented in practice is a very pragmatic solution where the security teams will do the investigation on completely de-identified information. And only when they choose that there's enough evidence to launch an investigation, only at that point do they reveal the identity of the actual person that or actor that's being investigated. And that process can be audited. It can be subject to regulation. It can go through human resources and the appropriate legal counsel. So that can be a very sort of controlled process so that you have full respect and control over the privacy concerns.
Very good. Thanks for that, Stefan. Engin, any additional thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, the anecdote with privacy that always kind of comes into play, especially in our situation, because we do track, we try to track devices and users, is that we did at one point have somebody call our support line to put a voodoo curse on one of our support engineers, specifically because they noticed the JavaScript that we were using to identify their browser. I think that, there's a couple of policy issues and public perception issues that comes in play with privacy, and then there's the definite gray area that security companies kind of have to walk. On the policy side, there are new EU mandates, I think that was just touched upon, in terms of what you can collect and what constitutes PII. And on the public perception side, when people use websites, they're completely okay with it. But when you tell them that, hey, you're being tracked and you're being profiled, and that profile is being fed into all these other ML technologies, it's going to target you for things in the future, then they start to get really, really kind of squeamish about it. And for us, there's a lot of really invasive fingerprinting techniques we could use that would probably give us higher resolution on some of our bot detection methodologies and better return on some of our ML algorithms, but would also be both, from the user perspective, probably a detriment to how they interact with the website, but also very, very uncomfortable because they kind of become aware that they're being tracked, right? And so it's a trade-off between, okay, how secure do we want to be? Do we really want to have super identification techniques to protect websites? Or do we want to say, okay, we're going to draw the line here, and we're going to say, we're okay with not being as robust or as unique in identifying individual users just because we don't want to cross into being overly intrusive. And so we always kind of err on the side of users, and we want to protect people's privacy, but that does come at a cost of our effectiveness.
Yeah, very, very interesting. The balance of how much to collect and use versus not. Glad to hear you're making a conscious decision rather than just running for it. And Igor, I'll switch to you. I've switched the topic here. Certainly touch on the privacy angle, but what I'd like to point out here as we continue to talk about this is that the bad actors, if you will, aren't following these rules. So I'm wondering your view on this ethics piece and perhaps some trends that we're seeing from the bad actors where they're not actually following these rules.
Thanks. Yeah, I just want it's the issues with most of the time is with data collection, not necessarily with processing side, be it human analyst or machine learning algorithms or AI approaches. And actually, and I think Stefan mentioned that the machine processing is definitely more protective or can be made with proper data masking, and abstraction layers can be a lot more protective of privacy than human analyst. After all, AI is not going to gossip about the recent discovery that it found in the data. So that's definitely a huge factor. That's where we see significant adoption in healthcare industry of this type of approaches to actually eliminate human analysts from the, as far as possible from sensitive data. Trends from bad actors, as far as privacy concern, You know what? I'll leave it to the rest of the panel. I mean, I don't have really anything interesting here.
All right, Sven, take it away. Anything on privacy and ethics or trends from the bad actors you'd like to share?
So from the bad actor side, I think the most noteworthy event from this past year is that we see ransomware, and we see it a lot, right? This is not necessarily something that relies on machine learning on the bad actor side. Like I said, they have more low-hanging fruit to pick before they venture in those areas. But it's interesting to note because there's a profit motive and incentives behind ransomware. And you see things like randomizations, domain generating algorithms, for example, that are supposed to make it a little bit harder for security solutions that depend on knowing the artifacts, the indicators of compromise, like the domain names that are fixed. And now that they get randomized, for example, it's more important to understand the behavior of these kinds of pieces of software, what they're doing, understanding the intent, and generally understanding what makes a file on disk ransomware, or even if it's not written to disk, what makes a process to be ransomware, that you can detect it. And that's interesting from a machine learning perspective, right? That's something we touched on earlier, that if you have the capability to generally understand, you capture mathematically what behavior falls into a certain category, then you get a leg up by detecting these things before they can do anything nefarious. So I think that's kind of where we're pitted up against the bad actors right now, at least in the commodity space, where we see a certain angle of attack, and basically what we on the defender side are doing right now, and how we're using machine learning to counter that.
Perfect. Thanks for that. So at the beginning, I had each of you share kind of what you're doing for good. So for benefit of time, I'm gonna continue to move along, and I believe I asked you to prepare a tip for a book that folks could read. What I'm gonna do here is ask you to send those to me in email, and I'll put them on ITSP TV for everybody to read. And I'll actually reach out to the audience here. If there's a book on artificial intelligence or machine learning that you think this audience would be interested in, go ahead and put a note in the feedback section of your recommendation, and we'll look to include those on the list as well. And I'd like everybody to give one final tip, but there's a couple questions here, and I'm trying to figure out how best to handle this. I think let's skip the tips, and maybe gentlemen on the panel, if you can send me your tips, and again, I'll include those on ITSP TV. And I'm going to get to a couple questions. I'm going to start one poll so people can take one last thing, because I'm interested to know, assuming everybody liked this topic, where we should continue the conversation. So I opened a poll. Should we look at more use cases? Should we do a tech deep dive, or perhaps some specific customer case studies? So those that are on with us, please take a minute and share. And while that's happening, I'm going to look here for one of the questions. There's one question. I'm not certain who wants to take this, but the question is, would it be right to compare Tesla's enhanced autopilot as machine learning and its fully driving capabilities as artificial intelligence? Anybody on the panel have thoughts on that?
I'd like to take that one as a first step, mainly because I was at Web Summit, and there's actually a really good automation segment there, and they were talking specifically about self-driving. I don't know that we would classify Tesla's fully autonomous vehicle as true AI. I think one of the key points that another research team that's working with at a Carnegie Mellon with GM was making is that even in a fully autonomous mode right now, there's still a lot of edge cases in the case of driving that pop up on a day-to-day basis, right? And so those have to be accounted for, and the system actually has to know how to account for them prior to individuals being in the car. You don't want your car to learn how to avoid disaster scenarios on the road with you in it and possibly make mistakes before it gets better, right? And so in the case of true AI for autonomous driving, we'd expect that it wouldn't need the programmer input to be able to handle those edge cases. We'd expect that the car would naturally be able to adjust to conditions on the road. That being said, Tesla and some of the other auto manufacturers that are in the field of autonomous driving are collecting a tremendous amount of data, and they are getting very, very good at autonomous driving, and they're getting very, very good very quickly. So it is an area that I expect will have AI in much quicker, based on the volume of data that they're collecting on the millions of miles that these platforms are actually accumulating on a daily basis, and the situations that they're observing across the world.
Perfect, thanks. And that was Stefan, yes? No.
No, Engin.
Sorry, thank you, Engin. And just, I'm going to ask people to hang on. Everybody's still with us, which is great. I'd like to bring one more question in and take it back to security. So we talked a little bit about ransomware, and there's a question here regarding APTs, and this person wants to know, is there any solution to leveraging these technologies to mitigate this threat?
Yeah, let me take this one. This is Sven. That's an excellent question. APTs are a very hard problem because there's a human behind it, or there's many humans behind it, right? And like certain techniques start to fail. If you detect 99% of malware, like an APT, like first of all, they may not even use malware. Like about 60% of intrusions are not malware-based. And for the remaining 40%, if you stop 99% of malware, just if you do the math behind it, if you do around 500 unique pieces, something for an APT, that's easy to do, you have about 100% chance of making the breach. So like what you need to do there is you need to look at multiple techniques, and you need to understand that there's a human behind the whole attack. That's why, like, for us at CrowdStrike, machine learning is one corner piece of the techniques that we're using, but it's not the only thing. There's things that you can know about a system that don't require you to learn something because it's fully understood. For example, credentials theft is such an example, right? There's just so many ways how you can steal credentials from a machine, like a password on a machine that you breached, to move laterally to other machines, to servers in HR or to code repositories. So that's something where we wouldn't really want to use machine learning, right? That's where you want to use domain knowledge and like apply like indicators of attack that can be indicative of a breach. So in summary, you want to use multiple techniques to counter APTs, and you want to look at the big, long time frame, the big picture, because these things are persistent.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and we're coming up to a few seconds left, so thank you very much for an amazing panel. Gentlemen, I appreciate your time, and thank you everybody for joining us at ITSP TV on Bright Talk. We'll see you at the next one. Thanks a million. Cheers now.